In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you why we saw everything we wanted to see from Zion Williamson in the first preseason game and why that should make you really, really optimistic for the Pel season. It's Locked On Pelicans, a Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Tuesday, day after the Pelicans beat the Orlando Magic 106-104, winning their preseason debut. And y'all, you see Zion? Dude looks good. We're going to break it down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Plus, look at Jordan Hawkins and kind of not a breakout game, but a very good performance from him. I want to get into the big man rotation, a couple of other notes with some fun lineups that I liked out there. All of that in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday because a lot of things we're going to talk about you've been hearing about for a while because we saw them come true or they were concerns that we thought were going to be a thing and definitely were. But let's start with Zion Williamson. Y'all, dude looked good. 19 minutes of action, 16 points on 8 of 11 shooting. 16 points on 11 shots is very, very good efficiency. You don't normally see that without free throws, but Zion didn't go to the line once. 8 of 11, that's 73%. He missed 1 3, so if you take that away, he was 8 of 10, 80% from the field. 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 1 turnover and 1 foul. He was good. He looked like what we want to see from Zion Williamson. Everything you wanted was great. He was active, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. The 2 steals. This is a guy who, look, we could go over the score, right? And we will in a second here. But I want you to really, if you go back and rewatch this, watch the defensive effort. You don't always see that from him at the start of the season. He gets better as the year goes on. He brought it in preseason. This isn't even game 1. It's game like 0 in a sense. He has a very good nose for the ball. He's very instinctual. And with Herb Jones and DeJounte Murray out there, you see him just be able, when they slow down a guy, the man they're defending, if Zion's nearby and he realizes that person's kind of stuttering a little bit, is slowed down, is kind of mucked up from Herb or Murray, he just went for the ball, took it, and booked it a couple of times. I love that from him. When he was coming into the league, if you're a longtime listener and everydayer from way back, this was what I said about him. The shot blocking wasn't what always impressed me with him at Duke. It was how he just has a nose for the ball and knows where to go for it and picks his spots really well, gets his arms in the passing lanes. You saw that from him in this game. That activity early in the season is massively important. And the Pelicans really wanted to get him going. You saw them be very game planned for Zion Williamson, to get him the ball, to have him attack. You don't really see them get to that later in the season. This just feels like the Pelicans are ahead of their usual curve here. He looked in shape. He was running around. He was on ball. He was off ball. He was using ball screens. He was setting screens. All of those. Just Zion being the dominant force that is Zion Williamson, getting into the paint and scoring, drawing 2 to the ball, and then passing. You saw him kick it out to Jordan Hawkins there. All of that is what makes Zion Williamson such a special player, and you saw it before even the first game of the regular season, the first preseason game here. Why does that matter? He should be doing that, right? Yeah, he should. But that isn't always how it's been. This looks like a different version of Zion Williamson. For the everydayers, I've been saying this about his last season. It didn't really start till January, right? It took that loss to the Los Angeles Lakers in the in-season tournament for Zion to wake up and start just being the dominant version of him. This offseason, it sounds like he's been committed to being that guy from day one, and you even saw it in action now. It's one thing to say it. It's one thing to post Instagram videos, do a feature with The Athletic, all of that, but you've got to see it on the court. So for him to have that kind of activity in game one, oh yeah, sign me up. I'm really excited about that. That's the type of Zion Williamson that if you get from game one, changes the trajectory of this Pelicans season entirely. No more bad starts to the year. No more waiting for him to get in shape to figure it out, for it to click. Whatever Zion 0.0 we're on right now, you're seeing it in action here. And that was maybe the most encouraging thing. If there's one thing to take away from this game, it is that Zion Williamson looked really, really good. You don't normally see this. Get excited about something like that. You need him ready on game one. He is ready. It is Zion's team. You can see with the way they were putting the ball in his hands that this is like he's got the keys here. He's driving everything. And that was even without Brandon Ingram in the lineup, which is fine. He doesn't need it right now. But seeing Zion just be the man, that's what you wanted. Box checked. We feel really good about that here. Also want to get into DeJounte Murray, who was overall pretty good in his debut. The shooting wasn't there for him. He struggled on that front in this game, going 2 for 9, 0 for 4 from 3. But he did finish with 6 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal as well. He was a plus 10. One of the things we're going to look at this season is, are guys winning their minutes? The everydayers are probably sick of this, but it's really important. I'm going to keep hammering this point home. Your starters need to win their minutes. They won their minutes in this game. DeJounte Murray, even without shooting the ball well, positive 10 here. That's what we're looking for with these guys. That starting lineup with Daniel Theis in instead of Brandon Ingram because he was just sat for rest, passed the eye test. That lineup with Zion, the starters around Zion, passed the eye test. That's what gets me excited. We said we didn't really care about some of the stats and certain things like that. Did they pass the eye test? They absolutely did. The first test that we were looking for was this game. A team that has a lot of length that could have given the Pelicans trouble, but New Orleans was competitive when it came to rebounding, 40-44. They did a good job. They passed the first test. It's preseason. Don't read too much into it. But overall, you had to like what you saw from the Pelicans, and in particular, Zion Williamson in this game. This is the type of thing that gets me more excited and more encouraged for the regular season. Something that also got me encouraged here. Did you see how well Jordan Hawkins played? That dude has some confidence in him. Let's break that down. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NBA fans, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can get in on the Pelicans action for opening night. You want to put that $5 down now, get your $200 in bonus bets. You can get the Pelicans opening night line -6.5 over the Chicago Bulls. This type of performance really encouraged me, particularly with what we saw from Zion Williamson. And you can do that over at FanDuel. You want to get in on the Zion MVP odds. He's getting good odds right now at plus 1,800. You can do that all over at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. It's going to be a very, very fun season. I'm excited to be here with y'all for your second listen, Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Make that your second listen today. You can find Locked On Fantasy Basketball wherever you get your podcast. Become a fantasy basketball expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Josh Lloyd. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Couple of notes. I'm going to record it after I do the show because I want to get this out before the Monday Night Football game when I'm recording it. And it's going to be real close. One of the things I went away from last year that I want to get back in terms of content and coverage, this is for YouTube. I don't post these on just the audio because they're only a minute long, is I like doing those 1-minute recaps after home and away games. I have a pretty mobile setup. We'll be doing some post-game shows from the Smoothie King Center court. I'm really excited about that this year. But I also want to make sure we get back to doing just those quick 1-minute recaps where if there's just one thing you need to know, we're going to run it down for you. Those are going to be posted after almost every single game, including a bunch at the arena too. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to all of that. It means when I'm at the games, I'll also have my mobile for my phone recording setup. So if you say hi, you might end up making it on Locked On Pelicans here. So that's something that's going to be coming this year. I put this out on Twitter, but I'm curious too. Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. I mentioned a lot of the advanced stats, net rating, offensive rating, defensive rating, but there's things like true shooting, field goal percentage. I was talking to someone about this at the game. Do you want to know more about those? Are those valuable to you? Do you not know what those are? Do you feel pretty well versed? If I did a show or even a bonus show going over some of the advanced statistics that I like, that I find valuable, is that something that you want to hear about? Let me know in the comments down below. But let's get into what you really want to hear about right now, and that is Jordan freaking Hawkins, who looked fantastic in this game, the win over the Orlando Magic. Coming in off of the bench, being one of the first subs in, Jordan Hawkins put up 18 points on 5 of 8 shooting. This is a really good performance. I told you in yesterday's show, are we ready for a breakout season for Jordan Hawkins? From the people I talked to at training camp who are watching their practices every single day, coaches, front office people, just other media people around the team, everyone I talked to was raving about Jordan Hawkins, his aggressiveness, his confidence, and you saw it translate out there on the court. Part of this I also think is on Willie Green, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute here. But Hawkins going 5 of 8, 2 of 5 from 3, and scoring 18 points is phenomenal. That's real good efficiency, 18 points on 8 shots. He got to the line, 6 of 7. That's what you like. That's what's so encouraging. We know that he can shoot the ball. We know that he's coming in with a green light and that he has the trust of this staff right now, but it hasn't always been the case, right? But he has it going in based off of his performances. Defense normally gets you on the court with Willie Green, but sometimes guys in practice are so good and lighting it up and shooting the ball so well and fit what you need that you can't ignore them. And Jordan Hawkins is one of those guys right now. And then he proved that correct out there on the court. For the second-year guard, that's good. He had an up and down year where he didn't always have the trust of the coaching staff, but this performance will definitely earn him even more trust. You're also seeing Willie Green grow as a head coach, knowing that they want to take more threes, that these guys should have a quick trigger and just rip a shot. It sounds like he hasn't always loved that sort of thing, but you're seeing growth from him to be like, you know what? Do it. Get up and down the court, take those threes, let's play a little bit faster. That's growth from the head coach, and that's then going to lead to improved performance from Jordan Hawkins. This was a very encouraging sign. You'd like to see more defensively from him, but he was active on that side of the ball. He's not going to probably ever be an elite defender, but can you try on that side of the ball? That's truly what it is more so than anything. That works. He did that. Rebounding leaves some to be desired, but he's a guard. He's not a wing. He's not a big man. I'm not expecting 5, 8, 10 boards from him or anything like that. 1 in the minutes that he played, is not great, but also the Pelicans didn't necessarily need more. We don't want to look at these stats and just be like, you should have more just because. They won the game. He was winning his minutes. Those are the type of things I think that you look at and you go, oh, okay, that's going to work just fine for the Pelicans here. If there was a rebounding deficit that was bigger instead of just 4, different story, but it wasn't the case. So we can look at this and go, what they're doing is working. We'll get the advanced stats on them as a rebounding team in the future too. They actually might already be out. Let's see what the Pelicans did in terms of defensive rebounding percentage. 72.7. What's that compared to what their number was last year? Let's see. Maybe that number feels a little bit low. We're doing this in real time. Let me pull it up from last season here. This is just something that popped in my head to look at. 76.9 to 72, whatever it was. Yeah, it's lower, but I think it was fine in this game, particularly against a team with bigger size. Maybe you look for him to grab 1 or 2 more, but I don't think we're looking at Hawkins to be an elite rebounder or anything like that. And his aggressiveness on offense, getting to the line. Imagine this is a regular season game, and Hawkins is being that aggressive and going to the line. It means Zion's going to go to the line more. It means Ingram's going to go to the line more. It means Murray is going to go to the line more. Getting the team the opponents in foul trouble and getting into the bonus and getting to the line gets you really easy points. It also has the benefit of putting fouls on opponents and maybe keeping them out of the game or glued to the bench. That also works really well. So this was just an overall good performance from him. Preseason, but the shooting is there. I wasn't worried about the shooting, the scoring after Summer League where he was trying different things. Did that. You don't need to experiment as much in preseason. Play your role. He did that perfectly. He's going to have an outsized presence for New Orleans to start the year, especially if Trey Murphy isn't ready. This is the type of thing that kind of makes you believe in him a little bit more and is a very overall encouraging thing to see. CJ McCollum started in this game. We're expecting him to start on opening night, and the shooting was there. That's what you want to see from CJ right now. 9 points on 3 of 6 shooting. Easy night in 16 minutes from him. Didn't need to do anything more than that. Take the shots that you get. You saw him active defensively with a block, passed the ball, got down, got the ball back, took the 3. An incredible sequence for him. Try on the defensive side of the ball. If he does that, I'm going to feel really, really good about what we would expect from CJ McCollum. The shooting is going to be there. I think there's potential he gets traded. But if you shoot the ball like that, they took 43s in this game. That's the magic number that they've said for years they want. I think it's a little bit arbitrary. 40 feels like slightly too high for New Orleans, but if they can get to that number, that's a really good sign. Ingram will help with that if he's taking threes. CJ's going to be a key part of that. You got to make your threes too. Burn those defenses for their attention on Zion Williamson. CJ's losing my voice from talking to people and like yelling at the game. When I haven't done that in a while. Whoa, cracking there, breaking a little bit. You saw him drawing 2 to the ball. You saw Hawkins drawing 2 to the ball. You saw Zion draw 2-3 to the ball. When you're doing that, drawing defenders to the ball, other players are open. So we're going to get into a lineup in the next segment that I really like that was kind of built around Zion, 2 shooters, a defender, and a big. And I want to kind of break down why that lineup is so effective. And it's something that they used last season too. And when we see that lineup again, I think this is a lineup we're going to see a lot. I don't know. It's a fun lineup to me. I kind of liked it. I want you to kind of understand what they're doing and why they're using this and how some of the strategy and off-ball actions kind of get into all of that. So that's something we'll talk a little bit about in the next segment here. Loved Herb Jones early on. The defense with DeJounte Murray, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second here in the next segment, was really great. He came out just making shots early on. Hit the first shot of the game, a 3. Give me more Herb Jones shooting like that. I want to take him in larger volume. What I loved with some of the things that he did was he had an above the break 3, which he didn't take a ton of or make a ton of last year, but did in this game, maybe trying to just be more of a threat on the perimeter. Overall, I'm pretty happy with what we saw from the team. There were a couple performances that weren't great. We'll get into those in a minute here. But overall, for, first preseason game, especially for 12:30 tip-off, I don't know. I loved it. That was pretty great. Overall, pretty happy with what we saw from the team. So let's break down some of the big men that played in this game. How did Daniel Theis do? What about Yves Missi and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, someone we have not talked a lot about on Locked On Pelicans? And then I want to get into a fun and maybe effective lineup that's built around Zion Williamson. Let's break it all down. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. This is my go-to ticketing app. I use this for everything. I was using this to maybe try and go sit courtside at this game because I thought it could be cheap. And by the way, they were. And then some friends came with me, so I ended up sitting in the usual seats. But Game Time is great because it just has so many features, and that's what I love about it. Game Time has a new feature, too, called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also don't have tickets only for sporting events. Whether you're looking for comedy, theater, concerts, whatever it is, they have it. If you're bored on a Friday night, you don't know what to do, get on the Game Time app and see what types of deals are out there. Now you've got an awesome Friday night. Use it for your next date night, whatever it is. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You've never been to a venue before? Are you buying good seats? You can see the view, a panoramic view from your seats before you buy. They make it easy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Use it for Pelicans opening night. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the ` Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, looking at this opening night win. It's not opening night. Opening preseason win over the Orlando Magic, and why there's a lot to take away from this game, actually. And I'm very excited about that and encouraged by that sort of thing. So overall, this is going to be, I don't know. I think it's going to be a fun and interesting season here, and I'm just really excited about it. Now, for your second listen, I'm about to go watch the Saints Monday night game as I'm recording this. It's about 7:10 here, so in like any minute it's kicking off. After the game, I'm going to immediately be listening to Ross Jackson, who's there in Kansas City. He's going to break down everything we saw from the black and gold here. Derek Carr going to be good? Derek Carr going to be bad? If he's good, why did it happen? If he's bad, what went wrong? Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. Make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's continue talking about the Pelicans' win over the Orlando Magic in preseason, 106-104 here. And I want to look at the big men. We kind of gave you the rundown on the show yesterday of what we're going to look at. The starters, did they pass the eye test? Yes. How did Zion look? Very good. Jordan Hawkins' breakout season. Literally, if you look at the graphic over here on YouTube where it says Jordan Hawkins' breakout season with an exclamation point, I left that bullet point exactly the same. I just changed the exclamation point to an exclamation point from a question mark, which is what it was yesterday. But he validated all of that. I told you to look for that in this game, and look what he did. One of the things we're going to look at is the big men auditioning for a variety of different roles here with the New Orleans Pelicans, and it was a mixed bag. I want to start with Daniel Theis, who started in this game, who you could argue is one of the worst starting centers in the league. I'm just saying. Guy who's going to be out of the league is now in the league. Kind of goes with that. But he was fine. He was fine. They used him in a couple of different ways that I found pretty interesting, but he was fine. 13 points on 6 of 7 shooting. I don't think it's always going to be 6 of 7 shooting, but low volume, high efficiency, 2 rebounds and assists, 2 steals, 1 turnover, 2 fouls. That's a good night for him. Of all the starters, he had the highest plus minus. Now, they did not, for a while at least, did not use him like a traditional big man. They honestly, in my opinion, used him more like a wing. He didn't get into the paint and set up for trying to post up or even just kind of get down there at all, for the most part, off ball until like midway through the first quarter. His first points were scored on cutting coming in from the wing after a Zion Williamson drive. He stood in the short corner, cut in as Zion drove to kind of get there and be the outlet guy and keep that defense moving. They used him on the perimeter a lot too, where he was screening for Zion Williamson, but not particularly rolling hard to the basket or even rolling at all. They used him like a wing, which brings me to 2 points with this. One, if you're going to use him like a wing, just play a wing. Play someone who we think is going to be a little bit better in Trey Murphy, let's say. But we can't do that right now because Trey's injured. But begs the question of, like, if you're going to not use him as a traditional big man, do you need him to be out there and act, and be a big man? No, just use someone who does what you need better. Defensively, he wasn't great. He's tougher than he looks. I told you all about that. He's definitely tough, including taking a ball to the nether regions there as he hit the ground hard. But he was fine. Like, he was not great defensively. I don't think he's going to be great defensively. The Orlando Magic with Paolo Banchero and some of the size they have is particularly tough, like Wendell Carter Jr., who left injured. But you have Banchero. Wagner has pretty good size there too. You also have guys like Jonathan Isaac, which can be a bit of a terror down low as well. These are kind of tough assignments for the Pelicans. Bataze is another one too. Theis held his own enough. Not going to be great there, but using him as they did kind of as more of a wing. And then they started to get him more traditional big man touches as the game went on. I thought was interesting to see. I'm going to be curious to see how they keep using him. But he showed that he's serviceable out there and that if he's starting, like, you'll be fine. And that's an encouraging sign going forward for the New Orleans Pelicans. Then you saw Jeremiah Robinson-Earl minutes. They clearly want him to kind of play that Larry Nance Jr. role. It's the first sub in off the bench to kind of play that role, fought hard for rebounds, didn't do much else, missed a couple of his threes, was 1 of 3 from there, but I like that he's shooting. I haven't talked about him much this offseason. I don't see him being a starter. I don't see him kind of being like a traditional big. It's a little bit undersized in that, even though he is a center, kind of power forward. It's that small ball 5, Larry Nance Jr. role that they'll play with him. But at times that wasn't too effective for the Pelicans last year. And I just don't know if that's the direction this team needs to go. We got to watch him a little bit more in preseason and kind of see where he's going to fit in with this team. I do want to talk about rookie Yves Missi, who got pretty good run in this game and was involved in a lineup that I thought was pretty fun. And that lineup, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, was Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, Javonte Green, and Yves Missi. Missi had very good activity and was a little bit more, showed more of an offensive game than we were expecting, including that like up and under from him for a bucket. That was really great. It's going to take him a while because what I was worried about him came to fruition in this game. He had 5 fouls in 17 minutes, 18 minutes of action in this game, 16 minutes. That's not great. The big concern with me this season for him was he's going to foul. He's going to foul a lot. He did it in preseason. He did it here. It's fine. It's a learning experience. We don't have big expectations, nor should we, for him this year. But that was my concern, and he didn't really do anything to alleviate that. Now, everything else was pretty good. He got up. He fought for boards. He was active on the defensive side of the ball, including a really great block. He was active offensively, trying to be a pick and roll man. That was really good and what you want to see. He fought for offensive boards. He had 3 of them in this game. That's encouraging. The motor, the activity, is there. The basketball IQ we know is pretty high. He's just got to work on the fouling, and he will find a role with this team. It was notable to me that the big man rotation kind of in order went Daniel Theis, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and then Yves Missi, and you finally got to see Karlo Makovic late in the game in the second half when the starters just weren't playing anymore. Shows a little bit about where you think the coaching staff is thinking for that rotation. So let's get into that lineup that I talked about. I really liked this lineup. This lineup reminds me of a couple from last season, and that's Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, Javonte Green, and Yves Missi. The Pelicans ran a version of this last year where it was CJ, another 2 shooters out there on the court with him, oftentimes like Matt Ryan and then Jordan Hawkins. Then you had defender in Herb Jones or Dyson Daniels. And then you had Jonas Valanciunas. And it just spreads the court really well. This was a pretty fun lineup, and I don't have the stats on it just yet. I'll try and get those. But Zion, CJ, Hawkins, Green, and Missi. Zion's your point guard in this offense. He's the guard in this offense. You have CJ and Hawkins as the shooter to space the court, the defensive hustle guy in Javonte Green, and then a lob threat big man to use in the pick and roll in Yves Missi. And I thought that lineup was pretty effective. Zion had space. You have shooters who are going to get open looks. I was talking to someone at the game, if you're listening, hey Josh, and we were talking about this lineup a little bit. And what I find about it is interesting because you feel if they take away Zion, like where's the offense going to come from? And it's those shooters. So if they drop 2 to Zion Williamson, who are they going to leave open? Someone's open. Zion drives and attacks the basket. Someone rotates over. Who's it going to come from? One of the corners, most likely. That's Hawkins and CJ and Green in there. Green's not an elite shooter. It's not a high volume guy, but that's someone that can knock that shot down. So when they rotate over, okay, kick the ball to CJ. That's a good look. Kick it to Jordan Hawkins. That's a good look. Say they keep those 2 defended and it's Javonte Green who's open. Well, what you do then is you have off-ball actions to try and spring one of Hawkins or CJ. You're not running these sets using this lineup to generate shots for Green or even for Missi. It should be Zion or one of the 2 shooters out there or a lob to Missi. That's what you're looking to do. And you saw them kind of pull that off effectively at times, I thought. And I'm pretty encouraged that this lineup reminds me of lineups that were pretty effective last year that have space. They have some defense there too. And you don't need this lineup to be good defensively. Because look, you look at some of the guys out there and you're like, yeah, that's not going to be great. And that's fair. It doesn't need to be. Your starters win their minutes and you want your bench units to just kind of play even. That is the goal here. Ideally be better, but at the very least, be a net 0 here. And this lineup you can use for 5 minutes that just let it outscore opponents. If they win those minutes by 2, that's a productive thing. however you win your minutes is how you win them. It can be done with defense. It can be done with offense. It can be done with a balance of the two. But that's a very offensive focused lineup that teams are going to have trouble stopping, particularly if we get this version of Hawkins and the shooting from CJ that we saw last year. Missi is just a rim-running lob guy. He's great. And above-the-rim finisher for some vertical spacing and then a defensive menace in Green. You could put Herb Jones in this. Shoot, you could even put a guy like DeJounte Murray in this lineup too, and it would be kind of fun. I like this lineup. It's one that I'm going to watch more. What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. What did you think of the game? Pretty happy with it overall, minus the start time, but whatever, no big deal. I'm ready for the regular season after something like this. I'm more optimistic than I was, mainly because of Zion Williamson. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.